Thank you for coming on.
Pleasure.
The Indian variant, do you agree with a warning from SPI-M, which is the modelling committee from SAGE last week, that because of the potential high transmissibility of the Indian variant, it's up to 50% more transmissible than the Kent variant they think it might be, we could see a new wave of COVID cases that would overwhelm the NHS?
Well, it's all a question of risk, because the conclusion of the scientists and the modelers is that it could be up to 50% more transmissible, and that is, of course, a challenge and a risk, but we don't know that yet. So the reason that we're able to take the step tomorrow, even though there is this new variant, which is clearly more transmissible, is that it may be that it is only just a bit more transmissible, in which case it will still eventually highly likely to become the dominant variant, but ultimately won't change the timings at all. But it may be that much more transmissible, and it's all about the race between the virus and the vaccine. And at the moment, the vaccine is ahead in that race, and we're seeing the number of cases overall coming down. But with this new, faster, more transmittable variant, we may see the number of cases starting to go up, and we've got to make sure that the vaccine rollout is fast enough that that doesn't cause significant problems. If it goes up a tiny bit from the very low levels at the moment, that really isn't an issue at all. But if it goes up a lot and get into exponential growth, that is obviously much more challenging. We don't yet know that. And crucially, because we've got this unbelievable surveillance capability now, we can spot this when we're talking about, dozens or, low numbers of hundreds of cases across the country, rather than waiting until we see it, in an overwhelming way, as we have done last time.
The crucial words I think you just used is we just don't know the severity of this. We don't know the severity of transmissibility, which does beg the obvious question, doesn't it? Why are you going ahead with step 3 tomorrow, which the Prime Minister said was the biggest step of all so far in terms of how far we go, if you don't know? If you get this wrong, you're effectively pouring petrol on a fire tomorrow.
No, we're not. We have a higher degree of confidence than we had that the vaccine does work against the Indian variant. The challenge is just that, the challenge is that it's more transmissible. And that means that the strategy is on track, which is to replace the restrictions with the vaccine as the primary defense against coronavirus, and to get it to something like flu. And that strategy works even with the Indian variant. So that is the good news. The bad news is that it's more difficult to pull off, and we're going to have to be particularly cautious. And we'll look to see before we take step 4 whether that's doable. But we won't take that look until the final decision, until the 14th of June, a week before the opening's due.
That I understand. You want to go ahead with step 3. You've given a reason why, although people still may be a bit worried about doing what you're allowing them to do tomorrow. But step 4, you're effectively just giving people 7 days notice to reopen business or not to reopen all their businesses, to change all their plans around whatever it might be. And surely you'll know before June the 14th whether or not the transmissibility of this virus, whether or not you can really do that. Is it really fair to wait 4 more weeks?
Yes, it's absolutely right and fair, because you want to use as much data as possible. We've said that we'll have a week cut-off for all the planning reasons. I appreciate that that's a short amount of time in the normal order of things. We've had to do things faster than that in the pandemic in the past. But people, I think, want us to take decisions based on the best possible available data. Now, of course, there'll be more information daily between now and then, and we publish it all, and you'll have seen the information that came out of Oxford University overnight, for instance. And there's
revealed by Sir John Bell on this programme.
Well, and a great scientist, Sir John is too. The point is that we think it's reasonable to have a cut-off date, and we think a week to go is the reasonable time. But of course, we'll keep observing things between now and then, and no doubt, you'll keep asking me questions about what's my latest interpretation, and that's how we do it.
And your gut feeling now on whether step 4 is going to be delayed or not, can you share that with us?
my gut feeling is that we'll have to make a decision in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, it's not a gut feeling, but let me ask you about local action, because this is, I think, a fairly legitimate series of questions that people are putting to you. If you're not prepared to lock down places where the Indian variant is surging, Bolton or Blackburn and others, why are you not at least delaying step 3 there, overnight stays and hospitality inside? And the prevalence rate, as revealed by Chris Whitty on Friday, is 200 out of 100,000 cases now in Bolton, which is really high and rocketing further.
Well, it was 192 out of 100,000, and that is clearly higher than we want it to be. We, of course, don't rule out local action. However, we know that when we were tackling the South African variant in South London, the throwing a huge amount of testing at it, combined with the vaccine, was effective in stopping the transmission in large part of the South African variant in South London. So that is the approach that we're taking, with the support of the armed forces to make sure we can literally get troops on the ground rapidly. And over this weekend we're testing 35,000 people. So the combination of highly targeted testing plus the fact that a large proportion of people have now already been vaccinated, with the extra surge of vaccinations to get more vaccine into those second jabs in particular, into the most vulnerable. That's the approach that we're taking. We don't rule out further action, but we have got these tools at our disposal now that we didn't have in the past.
Sure, of course. Nicola Sturgeon has already taken further action when it comes to the Indian variant. She has not allowed places like Glasgow and Moray to reopen tomorrow, as other places are. You're choosing not to do that. Are you a little frightened about the wrath of the great northern firebrand Andy Burnham? Is that why you're not doing local lockdowns?
No. We act on the data.
The data, as we've just discussed, is 192 out of 100,000 prevalence, but let's see where that one goes. Just asking people to voluntarily exercise caution in these sorts of areas, which is what the Prime Minister did on Friday. You're preying on people's goodwill. Are you really going to listen?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Look, we've talked about this many times during this pandemic. The truth is, I've become more and more confident that people are willing to do the right thing through the pandemic. It's been extraordinary, actually, how people have responded to guidance and to just knowing what makes you safe. Large swathes of people just want to do the right thing. So we are completely transparent about what we think is needed. Things like saying you can, for instance, hug a loved one who you don't live with, which we have not said before, but be really careful about it. Outside is safer than in.
How do you hug carefully, Mr. Hancock?
Because you can do it outside, and the other point I was making was you can make sure that that is obviously much safer amongst people who've had the vaccine. And so we've increasingly discovered about the importance of ventilation in making sure that you don't spread this virus. But still, a third of people who get the virus have no symptoms at all. So people know this, and people have followed the rules in the very, very large part during this whole pandemic. So I think that an emphasis on personal responsibility is absolutely reasonable.
Okay, if vaccination is the way to beat the Indian variant, as you've said, and it's a race against time to vaccinate more people than the Indian variant can infect, a GP friend of mine said last night, they just simply couldn't understand why you're not flooding all the available vaccine stocks in the UK into these hotspot areas right now. I'm sure adults in their 30s would understand if they have to delay theirs because you're trying to jab the entirety of Blackburn or Bolton ASAP.
Well, we are putting in extra vaccines into
just
Blackburn
extra,
and
why not
Bolton.
all of it?
Well, we're making the vaccine widely available in Blackburn and Bolton. And actually, the big focus is getting the second jabs for people who've had one, because that gives you the extra level of protection. But at the same time, we also know, while the focus is there, we also can see this variant in other parts of the country, not just in London and Bedford and the places where there are clusters, but individual cases elsewhere. So we've got to get this out across the country as a whole. So this week we'll be opening up to the over 35s. And we're absolutely determined to drive the vaccination program just as fast as supplies will allow.
Let me ask you about that, because we've had a drop in supply, haven't we, of doses? I know, of course, you're vaccinating second doses, but if you add them all together, it's still a significant drop on the sort of supply we were seeing in February and March. When do you think, if ever, you'll be able to get the supply up to 500,000 first doses a day again, the sort of glory days we'd seen a few months ago?
Well, actually, that's not quite right. The supplies are good at the moment. We've done over 600,000 jabs the last couple of days. Of course, we have got the second jab, so you get a relatively lower number of first jabs, but they're over 200,000 again. So we're in good shape on supply. It was steady at about 500,000 a day for a while, and now it's gone up a little bit above that, which is akin to all but the highest weeks in the past. So, vaccination supplies, which have been a problem, I won't pretend that there wasn't turbulence that, with our friends and neighbours, but that is now in relatively good shape.
Sunday Telegraph suggests you might get up to 800,000 or 1 million jabs a day quite soon.
Well, I'd love to. It all depends on supply.
You don't know that's going to happen.
Well, we don't know for sure, and they also said that we do that using stockpiles. We just don't have stockpiles. We don't have excess doses. We don't have a stockpile. We've just got the supply, getting it out as quick as we can get it in.
Let's talk about summer holidays this year. We know you're going to Cornwall. You've told us that on this programme several times.
Yeah.
Sir John Bell, the Regis Professor of Medicine at Oxford and the crucial link man between AstraZeneca and the Oxford Vaccine Group, he tells us today that nobody should go on a foreign summer holiday this year at all, as the risk of importing a new variant is just simply too great. Let me just play you what he told us.
We aren't at the peak of this thing globally at all yet. We're still going up the mountain. So, having people flying around and coming back with whatever local variant they run into, that is not a good idea in my view. I think, people just have to get used to the fact that Cornwall or Bournemouth or wherever is not so bad, and they should just enjoy the summer, and then we can get back to this properly when things settle down.
Do you agree with Sir John Bell, Mr. Hancock? Are you keen people now stay at home this summer and don't take a foreign holiday?
Well, I think we're going to have a great British summer. I'm certainly hoping to have a great British summer.
No, but what should everyone else do? We know you're going to Cornwall. Should they not fly abroad? Is it their moral duty now to stay at home?
We've set out the traffic light system for international travel precisely to answer this question, because there are some other countries in the world where the rates are really low. Rates in Portugal are as low as they are here in the UK, and so and then some other places as well. So that's why we've set out the green list. But people should not be travelling to places that aren't on the green list unless they have a incredibly important reason to. But we have been able to set out the green list, which we'll keep a really close eye on. But if you look at what's happening in Portugal, they're in almost exactly the same position as we are in terms of having their rates really low, having very few new variants. And so that's why we were able to put Portugal on the green list. But, I love this country. I love going on holiday in this country. And there's so many wonderful places to go on holiday in this country that's fine for me.
I understand that. But Sir John Bell was very clear in saying that going abroad, taking a summer holiday abroad in Europe, never mind anywhere else, significantly increases the risk of importing a new variant back to the UK. But do you agree with Sir John Bell or not?
I agree with the government policy, which is that we have a green list where it's okay to go, and that's why we've brought the green list in. And but what I would say is that people should not travel to amber or red list countries unless it's absolutely necessary, and certainly not for holiday purposes. That is not.
Okay. Why not make the amber list? Sorry to interrupt, but why not make the amber list countries red list countries then? It's very confusing. You saying don't go there? Why are you allowing them to?
Well, there are lots of different reasons, really acute reasons that people have to travel. For instance, people have dying relatives abroad, and then we have the amber list and the red list for the type of isolation you need to go into when you come home. And everybody goes through a testing regime, whether you're in green, amber, or red, so that we can spot the new variants and spot a problem in the other country. And in fact, our borders testing surveillance is the best in the world, and it means that we can spot problems in other countries sometimes before they know they've got a problem themselves. So the green list is here for exactly this reason, to provide for a safe way that we can, where we know that it's okay and safe to go abroad. The red and amber list countries are places that you shouldn't go to unless you have an absolutely compelling reason.
Finally, I'm going to hand you over to Daisy in a few seconds. At the start of the year, you and several other cabinet ministers, including Priti Patel, argued for every country to be on a red list, including India, because of exactly this new threat, the threat of new variants wherever they might come from. You lost that argument. This traffic light system was set up. Do you wish you were on the winning side of that? Because if you were, the Indian variant probably wouldn't be here.
Well, I think that we can tackle the new variant through vigilance at home, through the vaccine, through testing, and with the green list, we're able to allow safe travel to destinations that we know are in a similar or better place than we are with respect to the pandemic, and we have some of the toughest border measures of all.
And Secretary of State, if I can just pick up on that point of green lists and what we were hearing from John Bell earlier. Totally take your point, only go to places on the green list. But how confident are you that more places will be added to the green list? The green list was very small when it came out, but many people have been assuming it will get much bigger in time for the school holidays.
Mr. Hancock. We seem to have momentarily lost the line.
I hope I didn't scare him off, Tom. I don't think it was that much of a tough question.
We'll get him back. Let's just quickly recap while we're trying to retrieve him on what he said. Very interesting points there on the amber list and the red list we were just talking about. I haven't heard the government talk like that about the amber list being only for essential travel. But anyway, I think we have Mr. Hancock back, so Daisy, back over to you.
Have we got you back, Secretary of State?
Yes, sorry, I was lost in the transit from Tom to Daisy.
Easily done. Very briefly, I'm just wondering how confident you are, as many people are making an assumption that many more countries will be added onto the green list in time for the school holidays.
Well, we'll keep the list under review. We'll keep under review the countries that are on the list to ensure they stay safe. And we'll keep under review countries that aren't on the list.
But do you think that people are assuming too much?
Well, I'm not. I don't know what people are assuming. And what I can tell you is what the government's policy is and is going to be. So we're going to review the list every 3 weeks and make announcements about as we see them. But we look both at whether countries should go on and whether countries should come off. And make that judgment based on the data.
And talking of data, I just want to take you back to a very interesting chat you were having with Tom about Bolton and areas like it where we have these flare-ups of the Indian variant. And I just wondered if your data is telling you how many people who have caught the Indian variant and subsequently are very sick with it or in hospital with it have not had the vaccine, and how many of those potentially should have had the vaccine. So in other words, is there a concern that people are not having the vaccine when they should have it?
Absolutely. The majority of people who are currently in hospital with COVID in Bolton could have had the vaccine and haven't yet had the vaccine.
So what can be done about that to persuade those people? I mean, for instance, are they from communities where there's a higher scepticism about the vaccine? Should there be more outreach to get them to be jabbed?
Well, we're going door to door offering the vaccine to make sure that there's full access to it and that we can persuade people to take it. And I suppose the number one lesson from this episode is that if you are eligible, you should come forward and get the jab. And if you want to know why that's important, the fact that the majority of people in hospital with coronavirus in Bolton this morning are eligible for the jab but haven't had it yet is the strongest proof point of why it's so important for everybody to come forward and get the jab.